We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margalus, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to an emergency version of the Sox Machine Live. I am your host, Josh Nelson, as it is currently Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. I don't know why I said currently, but breaking news coming down the pipe right now in the wire. ESPN's Jeff Passan, and this is still a developing story. The San Diego Padres are the ones that will be acquiring Dylan Cease, as Dylan Cease is being traded to San Diego. This story this week has really unraveled when Gerrit Cole has his elbow injury, and there's a lot of panic right now in New York regarding Gerrit Cole's elbow. The Yankees picked up the phone and they called the White Sox about Dylan Cease, but they weren't the only ones to call about Dylan Cease. The Texas Rangers also called about Dylan Cease. John Heyman has now reported the San Francisco Giants called about Dylan Cease, but it was Ken Rosenthal's reporting last night that mentioned the San Diego Padres and how the Chicago White Sox sent scouts throughout all of San Diego's backfields to watch them during spring training to gauge on what the possible return could be, sending prospects back to Chicago. And James Fegan and Jim Margalus will join me momentarily. You guys are getting a glimpse of what it's like to cover breaking news at Sox Machine here. So any questions or comments that you guys have, put it in the chat. This is what we're going to be paying attention to, though, as far as a possible return when looking at the San Diego Padres top prospects, as I bring that list up now on MLB.com. They currently have 5 top 100 prospects. It starts with catcher Ethan Salas, who's just 17 years old. He's already the estimated level to start the year in Double-A. We'll see. That's a bit aggressive, but he is a top 10 prospect. Number 10 is Jackson Merrill, who's been spending some time at shortstop, but could also play in the outfield. The level, again, expected in 2024 is Double-A. He's just 20 years old. And then you have a trio of pitchers, Robbie Snelling, Dylan Lesko, Drew Thorpe, with Snelling and Thorpe in Double-A for the Padres. And again, it kind of builds up to this question of exactly how are the White Sox rebuilding this roster on the fly? And I think we've been waiting all offseason to gauge and just what kind of general manager Chris Getz is for the Chicago White Sox and what kind of players that he likes. And now joining me is the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. It's Jim Margalus. Jim, welcome to the Emergency Podcast. We got a lot of people watching right now, a lot of people in the YouTube comments as we all wait to see what the possible return is. What are your initial thoughts about San Diego being the team acquiring Dylan Cease?
I have the return. It's Ethan Salas, Fernando Tatis Jr., Tony Gwynn. No, it's just, I wish I had that news. I don't. It's kind of the moment of truth here for Chris Getz, isn't it? after all these moves where any general manager theoretically could have made them, Aaron Bummer, 5-for-1, Paul DeJong, Nicky Lopez, Eric Fetty, etc. Like, this is the one where we've been waiting to see just exactly his sense of value, his sense of timing, ability to negotiate and hold out. And I've just been refreshing nonstop to see who's on the way.
Yeah. And again, welcome everybody to Sox Machine Live. I'm Josh Nelson alongside Jim Margulis, as another huge group of people are joining. For those folks in San Diego, welcome. I travel to San Diego every single year to visit friends and family, and Dylan Cease is going to a fantastic destination. Here's the funny thing though, Jim. The Padres are leaving tonight for Korea. That's where they start their season. So for Dylan Cease, I don't know. He's probably going to have to go, back to the Airbnb or the rental, pack, and find a flight. I'm sure Scott Boras could help him, his agent. But he's got to find a flight now out of Phoenix to Korea to join his new team, the San Diego Padres. And I think just from a San Diego perspective, this is an intriguing trade because they were in a team in transition this offseason, Jim. Obviously, with their owner passing away, that has greatly impacted as far as their budget. They were going to be cutting payroll already down to around $200 million, which that's a number that White Sox fans have never seen before. But for the Padres, that's cutting budget. But they're not giving up. They're not folding on the season. And now acquiring Dylan Cease, maybe that makes him the sleeper in the National League West. It certainly makes him more competitive to challenge the Los Angeles Dodgers than they were yesterday.
Yeah, it made sense once, the Padres were mentioned as a Cease, maybe like the third team in, or at least the third most notably tied to the White Sox, with the Yankees and the Rangers, that like once they were there, it's like, yeah, can't count them out. One between AJ Preller being hyperactive and also with the way he fits. Like that was always the appeal with Cease, is that like he fits in any budget. $8 million this year, at best like 15 or 16 million next year. Like if he maximizes his value, he might double his salary, but still that's like 2 years and 24 million, probably at the most. And that's what Kenta Maeda signed for with the Tigers. He signed for 2 for 25. So basically to get a pitcher who has finished runner-up in the Cy Young, has the ability to strike out more than 200. It's really hard for any team to say like, no, we can't afford that. Yeah, every team can make room for Dylan Cease on the payroll. So once, seeing them pop in late and seeing like the Dodgers having problems, the Giants not sure what's going on with them, there was an opportunity for the Padres to be interested, especially since they do have the prospect depth, assuming it isn't, Ethan Salas coming on over, which would be really a delight. But assuming it's not going to be that awesome, they do have like that secondary level of prospect depth that like the Yankees didn't quite have, the Rangers are kind of iffy on. That's, make for a satisfying deal and maybe, hopefully one up what the Orioles traded to Milwaukee for Corbin Burns.
I'm hoping it's better than that. We are still waiting for those that are watching the live stream. Again, more people are joining. Welcome. I'm Josh Nelson alongside Jim Margulis, the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. We cover the Chicago White Sox.
John Morosi says Drew Thorpe is going to the White Sox.
Okay, so Drew Thorpe. So let me go ahead and bring that top 100 again. Drew Thorpe, a right-handed pitcher. Coming to the Chicago White Sox. So he currently ranks 85th in the top 100 for MLB.com. So we're following this is when you guys are learning as well. So that's the Padres. They have top 5. They have 5 prospects in the top 100, I should say. I apologize. The White Sox have 2. So Drew Thorpe would be the third ranked White Sox prospect in their top 30 now with this pending return. So we'll see. So that's 1. And again, I'm sorry that we're learning here on the fly. So Drew Thorpe, just 23 years old, 6'4", 212, outstanding changeup. I remember as far as when he was back in Cal Poly, there was a raving just about his secondary stuff. And wow, when you look at his numbers last year, covering 2 levels, 23 starts, 139 in the third innings, 182 strikeouts. He had 138 strikeouts in high A, and then in double A, just a 1.48 ERA in that environment down in San Antonio. What was he throwing?
Another piece coming in from Morosi, Jairo Iriarte.
Okay, and we'll have to bring up the Padres top 30. 44 strikeouts to 5 walks. So Drew Thorpe, outstanding last year. Wow, these are big numbers. So Jim, nobody in the White Sox farm system pitched as well as Drew Thorpe did. Did they last year? Nobody did.
Nobody among top prospects, like maybe like Mason Adams had that, a nice year, but he was kind of beating up on low A, competition, being years older. So that's kind of the only guy I can think of who had like a complete season like that.
Okay, so Drew Thorpe promising, and there's probably a little bit more conversation about Drew Thorpe coming over to the White Sox. So looking at the Padres, so Jairo, how do you say his last name? I'm
guessing Jairo Iriarte. That's my guess.
Jairo Iriarte. Okay, so 90 innings last year. He made 21 starts. He reached double A, just a few starts there. So another young arm. Lots of walks last year, 45 walks in 90 innings, but still a pretty impressive strikeout total. And MLB.com, pretty good fastball. Slider, changeup. If anything, you can maybe make him a reliever. Sat mid-90s, touched 98 in double A last year with the slider. So, Jim, that's 2 pieces already. Pitchers. And I can already hear some White Sox fans asking, okay, where are the position players that are coming back in this particular trade? Do you have any early complaints about this being a pitcher-heavy return?
I think the only issue with it being like a pitcher-heavy return or pitcher-forward return, or maybe pitcher-exclusive return, Nightingale is saying Thorpe and Iriarte, and Morosi tweeted one that comprised them both and nobody else. So that might be the entire return.
No. Really? For 2 years of Dylan Cease. Oh man. Like Drew Thorpe again put up monster numbers last year. But that would be quite a bit of risk, wouldn't it, Jim, to just trade Dylan Cease for 2 pitchers in double A? You're
Thorpe,
really counting on Drew Thorpe to pan out.
Yeah, Thorpe, Major League Baseball, MLB Pipeline were the low outlet on Thorpe. He was 58th on Baseball America's top 100, 45th on Baseball Prospectus's top 100. So he does have bigger fans out there. So in terms of like a primary return, like that's kind of in the ballpark, but just double checking here.
Yeah,
right now still just the 2 of them. But yeah, I think the risk with having like a pitcher exclusive deal is like the best case scenario is that you get somebody who's as good as Dylan Cease. Yeah, it always makes the comparison a little bit flat when you can directly compare righty against righty, pitcher against pitcher, strikeout guy against strikeout guy, and Cease is a hard guy to he leaves big shoes to fill.
Well, huge shoes to fill, at least for the White Sox during rotation. We're planning to do our season preview. So our last Sox Machine podcast, we previewed the White Sox outfield, lengthy conversation, especially for Andrew Benintendi, talked about Luis Robert, talked about the right field situation. Tomorrow night, our plan was to talk about the White Sox infield, but I had a feeling that our plans were going to be disrupted because just how quickly this came together. And for those joining as another big group has joined, welcome. I'm Josh Nelson. Alongside Jim Margulis of Sox Machine, we are covering the Dylan Cease trade live. Jeff Passett at ESPN was the first to announce that Dylan Cease has been traded to the San Diego Padres. The San Diego Padres are making their way tonight to South Korea to get ready for MLB's opening day series between the Padres and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So Dylan Cease has to find a way to meet his new teammates in Korea. But Jim, like all offseason, GM meetings, it's a possibility. I gave it 1%. And then it increased to, well, maybe it's a 50-50 shot. And then before Nashville in the winter meetings, we thought 99% certainty when we're in Nashville, we're covering a Dylan Cease trade. Didn't happen. And then suddenly Dylan Cease is planning on to be the opening day starter. And then Pedro Grifol yesterday just completely fumbling his response to the media about is Dylan Cease still going to be the opening day starter? And he goes from a definitive yes a month ago to how am I supposed to know? We could rag on Pedro Grifol here in a moment. But I guess my point or the question to you, Jim, is after this entire offseason and where we are and Dylan Cease outstanding last night in his last start with the White Sox, striking out 8 over 3 1/3 innings. Are you surprised on how quickly this came together this week since we heard about the rumors firing up again on Monday?
It is surprising just because, or I should say on one hand, it's surprising just because we hadn't seen it. And there was plenty of time, especially since, as we talked about, Cease is affordable. He's not like somebody who's going to break a team's budget to where like they have to carefully arrange all of their payroll to accommodate somebody like him. Or in the case of like the Tigers, I always go back to the Tigers and Victor Martinez, just like a team having an emergency and then choosing the most expensive solution just because, he's still out there. Cease could have been traded at any time and teams should have been happy to have him on the payroll. So, to have him last this long when nothing really changed, I guess like things changed with Garrett Cole, for instance, but nothing changed too much with the Padres, even the Rangers to a lesser extent. They knew they were going to be missing pitchers for the first half of the year. So to see them come in late with like an increased seriousness all of a sudden was a little bit weird. But I think when you still see Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell out in the market, like it was just a weird offseason altogether. So, I guess it's fitting in that regard that it happened just as slowly as some other major items of business this winter. And now that James is here, I'm going to tag out so I can write a couple paragraphs about the return and then I'll jump back in.
All right. So again, Jim is back on writing duty. So we welcome in James Fegan, our beat reporter for the Chicago White Sox. And James, let's start with the softball question for you. What are your thoughts about the destination, Dylan Cease to San Diego? Did you get any inclination? I know yesterday when we chat in the VC group chat, you were hearing Texas, but it ends up being the Padres.
Not really. The Padres tend to swoop in and act aggressively and quickly. So it's almost like you should see them you should see their shadow at any moment on the periphery when any sort of big move is possible. I didn't see it coming, but it's also like this is the team that does these sorts of things.
And I appreciate the Padres fans. So Cameron, thanks for hopping on. Most diehards are pretty torn in the package. Thorpe was named MLB's top minor league pitcher of the year and was the headline prospect. That's right. I forgot about that. Thorpe was part of the Yankees system before he was good enough for San Diego to trade Juan Soto to the Yankees. So I guess you could piece together the White Sox were involved in a Juan Soto trade. That would have been kind of funny back in the day.
Sure, put it in the ads.
Yeah. Yeah, they were part of it. White Sox involved in trade with Juan Soto. That's as close as they're going to get to Juan Soto. What are your thoughts about if this is the rumored return and it's just 2 pitchers? Because you did report that Chris Getz's goal, James, was to obtain players at AA or higher level in return for Dylan Cease. If it's just 2 pitchers and one of them being the minor league pitcher of the year in Drew Thorpe, is that good enough of a return for Dylan Cease?
I don't know, but the scouts I talked to or have texted recently have been mostly high on it. I think it's kind of the mixture, and I don't know if this is at this point maybe more the assumption is like these are the headliners, so to speak. Since kind of the goal in talking to people around was that like, you want kind of 2 top 100 caliber guys to headline it. And then there could be more fill-ins from there. We'll see. Maybe someone still with some ceiling to dream on top of it. But it's with them talking about proximity this year. One, I mean, Iriarty has made it up to AA. He got like almost 30 innings there last season, but it's kind of that mixture of, where he's able to say that, he's helping the team now and later, even though obviously it's, the immediate results probably lowering the projected win total a lot, but you have this mixture of Thorpe, who's someone who, with the command that he has and the profile that he has of, pitchability, having a changeup, you can say like, well, this is someone we think can help the rotation this year, even if it's not like a break camp situation, which I would be surprised by. And Iriarty is more of like we really love the ceiling here, and this is somebody we think could be, has at least the ceiling that's on par with what Cease was able to achieve. That's a lot to put on him at this point, and I wouldn't maybe go so far with the same outcomes, but is maybe, I don't think he's that different than maybe Cease was at this point, when he was really dominating high A and had that good year in 2018 where he finished it in Double A. Maybe that's too far of a stretch to say, just because he doesn't have the strike throwing history and doesn't have as many innings kind of piled up as Cease did in that 1 year where he won Pipeline Pitcher of the Year. But I think that's a general rough idea of how to think about, how they tried to equal the ceiling and also got somebody who can help them in the near term. And obviously has had success and gotten some accolades, even if he's kind of a high floor guy more than somebody who could have big strikeout numbers with big velocity at some point in his career.
I want to welcome everybody that's just joined us. We just hit more than 5,000 people on the live stream. I'm Josh Nelson alongside James Fegan. We are from Sox Machine. I think for a lot of people joining us right now, you may be joining from San Diego. Welcome, Padres fans, as Jeff Passan was the first to report from ESPN, and I think he's still waiting for all of the dominoes to come in as far as his trade, but he was the first to report that the San Diego Padres finalizing a trade to acquire Dylan Cease, as the Padres adding Cease to the rotation. And again, like I mentioned with James, like from a Padres perspective, for those Padres fans that are watching a live stream right now, obviously White Sox fans know all about Dylan Cease, but you getting a chance to speak with Cease before camp and at spring training as well, he sounded like he was in better shape. He sounded like he was in a better state of mind entering this camp, despite all the trade rumors. Like, he sounded very prepared, no matter how the season unfolds, to be ready to bounce back from 2023.
I mean, Dylan's never sounded like someone not in a good state of mind or troubled by the world or anything like that. But yeah, something he threw out there is that he, in previous off seasons or when the season ended, that he usually has to take some time resting or deal with some soreness or deal with some tricep issues, but that wasn't the case this year. Obviously, the White Sox weren't very competitive down the stretch. He was able to kind of plot out his offseason maybe a little bit ahead of time, but he said that he felt physically as good as he has at any point, which is notable for somebody who hasn't missed a start, who has the most starts in baseball over the last 3 years, has been able to take the ball for him to be feeling better. In terms of velocity, it's better than last year in camp. Last year was a lot more 94, 95 and building up. And this year, you've seen more 96, 97. It's not the highest he's ever been. He's been somebody who's sat 98, 99 at times, though I don't know how much you'd really expect him to do that in spring. It's just that since his velo was down last year, if he's not hitting, his previous maxes, you kind of are unsure if he's going to get there until he does. But I think even just a small tick up, maybe one, since he kind of lost 2 last year, going back up 1, that would be something relevant. And he's just looked good. He's executed his pitches. His stuff looks as good as ever. I don't know if the 64-mile-an-hour changeup is going to be a big factor, but as far as like hoping that you're going to get a median between, the Cy Young year where I think 220 is probably pitching over your head for anybody ERA wise, getting a median between that and last year, I think that's a reasonable expectation just from how he's looked.
And I like this comment from Matthew. Matthew's part of our veterans committee on Sox Machine. San Diego seems like a good place for disc golf. I don't know. For those in San Diego watching a live stream right now, what is the disc golf environment like in San Diego? Because Yeah, Dylan Cease, he owns now 2 courses. Is that right? He's bought land and developing 2 courses.
Yeah, I think one is like pretty much done, and the other one he's like funding. I mean, he's funding both, but like the other one's like in the process. But he made it clear he is not a big design force in the courses. He's more of an interested financier than someone with a ton of disc golf know-how. So sorry to disappoint the Padre disc golf enthusiasts, expecting Dylan Cease to win a disc golf tournament while the season is ongoing at some point.
We got this super chat from Drew. Drew, thank you so much for the super chat. And if you guys would like to participate in the super chat, you could throw us a tip and we'd be more than happy to answer the questions that you have. Drew is asking James, who starts opening day now? Garrett Crochet. That was going to be my segue before the opening day. We'll get to that question, Drew. I promise you. You also reported on SoxMachine.com today that the White Sox were pursuing Michael Lorenzen, former Detroit Tigers and Philadelphia Phillies pitcher. That has to come to fruition now, right? Because with Dylan Cease gone, and again, James, we were not expecting big things from the 2024 White Sox, but they still have to play a 162-game schedule. And I think it seems obvious more than ever, they really need someone like Michael Lorenzen to step in and help out just to carry out the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't predict Lorenzen for opening day starter. I mean, until somebody's in camp. I appreciate if they signed him because it would make me look a lot smarter and like a good reporter. But until somebody's in camp, I especially on March 13th, you can't even necessarily project them to be ready for opening day. I mean,
right.
Even if he's been working and throwing, which I assume he has, like it's just not facing live hitting in a game situation. I would almost just assume he'd be behind a little bit. But yeah, that seems like a logical place to find innings. It's kind of a similar bet on, athleticism and repeatability and command, and then maybe we'll figure out a weapon to actually miss bats and get people out from there, which is a little bit what you're seeing them just trying to fix deliveries right now for a lot of guys they have in camp. Or, in the case of signing Fetty, someone who's kind of fixed his arm action and brought more consistency. I think that'd be kind of the sort of bids they've made across the rotation, and Lorenzen being kind with that. But as far as who's opening day, I don't know if Fetty's your big free agent signing from the offseason. I don't know if that's the big, electrifies the fan base sort of name. But as far as like proven guys who are coming off recent success, I don't know what your big options are. At least Kopech has like that familiarity with the rotation, but he's not really in that place right now in his command where his future is in the rotation is very clearly set up, or if he's in the consistency to expect success out of him on opening day. So I really don't know where they'll go with that. I would lean Fetty, but man, what a weird world we're living in where we've gone from Dylan Cease to having this rotation full of guys that have been the rebuild for years to a KBO signing.
Yeah, I guess let's just walk through it, right? The White Sox rotation: Erick Fedde, Chris Flexen, Mike Soroka, Michael Kopech. I mean, does Nick Destrini break camp with the team? He's been looking good.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have heard some enthusiasm about him maybe breaking camp on the basis of just like, hey, he's performed to do it, and he's lined up rotation-wise with Cease. That kind of sneakily did that last night, where his start was piggybacked on top of Cease, where he could take the slot or be on the same time. I don't think you'd necessarily want Nick Destrini open day starter, but it was interesting in terms of just him being able to step in is something to consider. But I definitely heard talk of like if it was just a pure meritocracy, he's pitching as well or better than anyone in camp. So you can make the argument for breaking camp with him, and he'd be. The one thing is that because he's not like this majority or consensus top 100 prospect, even if they break camp with him and he surprises everyone and wins Rookie of the Year, they don't get draft pick compensation because he's not PPI eligible. But that certainly becomes a lot more realistic now. And I think just looking at the raw talent and where everyone's headed, I think he's probably part of the starting 5 by the end of the year. So why beat around the bush if now your rotation is missing? It's top dog.
Brian, enjoy this comment, man. In case further proof it's needed, Sox Machine was the first Sox network to go live tonight. Thanks to you, James, for the cream of the White Sox media crop. So
are there a lot of Sox networks?
It's us, baby. We just went over 5,500 people in the super chat. So thank you guys so much during the live stream as the number continues to climb. Clutch hat trick. I don't mind the deal. Steven Wilson in it too. So again, let me bring this up again from MLB.com. So Steven Wilson, I'm scrolling down. I'm concerned. Not in the top 30 for
Wilson's
San Diego.
29.
All right. Then he won't be in the top 30. That's my bad. So again, thank you to everyone mentioning this. Steven Wilson, also part of the deal.
He'd be he'd be immediate guy to throw in that bullpen, and has 4 years of service time left, where you can think of him being on a at least what they hope would be a good White Sox team by the end of it. But that's immediate, more stabilization move, and Getz has made it, and you could think of its lip service in the sense that like trading away Cease kind of wrecks this team in a big way. But he did say that there was an emphasis on helping the team now and later, which was more of a way of signaling that they were looking for more major league ready and major league close talent than just the 2017 rebuild was a lot of like almost everybody was an A-ball by the time the prospects that they acquired, especially mid-season. And it was kind of like, all right, we're going to get these guys and load up on them and then wait 2 years to see any of them or really expect them to have impact and have this longer time before you expect them to build back up. Whereas everything they've said has been signaling looking for shorter term stuff. And this would certainly line up with the idea of we got the real prospects are in AA, and we had immediate help for the bullpen that also isn't kind of a 1 year rental either.
Go ahead, Jim.
Bob Nightingale says Samuel Zavala is expected to be included in the deal.
All right. So that's the 7th ranked prospect. So right now, Drew Thorpe, Iriarte, Zavala.
And then Steven Wilson, right-handed reliever,
right,
according to Dennis Lynn.
Okay, so here's a position player, not far, Fort Wayne. How did he do last year? Oh, very White Sox. He's already a White Sox prospect, baby. Look at that walk to strikeout rate. A 391 on base percentage and slugged 406. High A, not great, but an A ball last year. 267, 420, 89 walks. Mercy. In 101 games. We're always complaining about these guys don't walk enough, Jim. And there you go. Samuel Zavala will help with the walk rate.
Yeah, he's also 6'1", so he's not undersized. He's a normal outfielder. Find a new slant.
Okay, so Drew Thorpe, number 5 prospect for San Diego, top 100. He'll slot 3rd overall in the White Sox top 30 at MLB.com. Zavala, Iriarte. I mean, are these 3 in the White Sox top 10? You guys just did your top 10 prospects. Are these 3 in the White Sox top 10? It's like an instant reaction.
I mean, when you guys made me do that, I forgot that they had traded for Dominic Fletcher. Now you want me to analyze guys that they haven't even officially acquired yet. My head's spinning. I think Jameson Fisher is probably still in the top 10 somewhere.
So we did get this super chat real quick from Brian Marshall. Brian, thank you so much. Am I crazy for thinking the Aaron Bummer trade did more for the White Sox team? And Brian, I guess looking at it 2 angles. One, not necessarily for the future, but probably for this season, Jim. The White Sox got more out of 2024 roster, but talent-wise, the White Sox got a lot more from San Diego.
Yeah, the criticism, or at least, I guess it would be criticism, but like the reason why the Bummer trade was like big in terms of numbers, but didn't really leave a lot of resonance, was that it was hard to find the fixture. Like everybody that got back, Soroka, impending free agent, Nicky Lopez was a utility infielder for them. You're looking, Jared Schuster, extra starter, didn't really live up to the 1st round pick profile. You can look at their, Braden Shoemake, same thing. So like their entire package was guys they're just weren't happy with or going to get rid of anyway, going to cut maybe DFA, wanted to clear space in the roster. And so it was just basically like a grab bag, kind of like going to a garage sale and seeing like a pack of 20 baseball cards for $1. Like, who knows what those cards are from all years? See what you get. It's probably commons, but that's what the White Sox got. And there were guys the White Sox could use more. So yeah, it made some sense, especially Bummer is getting further and further away from his old self. And this might be all they could get from him now, and maybe even less a year from now. So that, that deal was like transactional, but not really anything that improved the state of the franchise. Whereas this might, Thorpe, I think, is the kind of pitcher where, okay, like here's a arm under team control. Seems like he throws strikes. It's not a huge project for Brian Bannister. Take some workload off him. So hopefully he stays healthy and fills a rotation spot for 5-6 years. And you can kind of go from there. I need to look up Zavala's game a little bit more. But like he's along the same lines in terms of like, an outfielder who fills in a sorely needed part of the prospect depth chart.
Good point.
And so they don't have to worry about like drafting that guy or signing the guy, finding an outfielder from anywhere. So I think this trade, definitely has a lot more sizable impact for the rest of like the, I guess Chris Getz's original window.
And since we now surge past 6,000, we're approaching 6,500 people involved in the live stream. Welcome. I'm Josh Nelson alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan. We are part of Sox Machine. We cover the Chicago White Sox. I'm assuming many of you are from Chicago, but some of you may be from San Diego, wondering who the Padres are acquiring in Dylan Cease. He's well known, but looking at roster resource on Fangraphs.com. And James, when you look at the starting rotation, especially the front four now, with Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove, Dylan Cease, and I like what Michael King can bring to the mound for the San Diego Padres. This is a pretty good front four of a starting rotation for San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the White Sox would like to have it.
Yes, that's true.
Dylan, I mean, another, I guess, element of it is like Dylan's not a ground ball guy. So putting him in San Diego, where somebody who's going to work up in the zone a lot and give up fly balls, and I mean, I don't think, maybe I've just watched too many White Sox games in San Diego, but it doesn't seem the biggest pitcher's park I've ever encountered. But it's certainly an environment that's suited for him a bit more than the one he's currently in. So I think that's a good element to it. But I think the main thing you look for just with what Musgrove and Darvish did last year is health, and I think probably Cease, somebody who can point to and say, there's no guarantees, and maybe if anything he's due, but look at Cease and say this guy's taking the ball every single time in the last 3 years, or he really hasn't been on the IL for any sort of arm issue since 2017 because he had shoulder stiffness at the end of his year in low A Canapolis and then just threw bullpens and was fine like 2 weeks later. He's had a kind of a spotless track record in terms of history for health. So adding some durability to where you got a Yu Darvish who is actually older than me, and Musgrove dealing with it, he's dealt with in the last year, and Michael King, having the broken elbow 2 years ago, that maybe it's a little bit more security from Dylan Cease, which is weird to say about Dylan Cease, who is constantly like the big stuff over command guy that we covered and has led the major leagues in walks a couple times. So the package is has this natural erraticness to it, but what his providing it has been stable. He has not been somebody with these wild swings in performance. I mean, the ERA goes up and down, but you haven't seen like him drastically reduce stuff or drastically reduce command or just compromised by health. So I think some consistency of that group is probably exciting for, trying to beat the Dodgers every single year.
So James, let me follow up on that, because what's intriguing about this type of transaction from AJ Preller, he lets Blake Snell walk, 2023 Cy Young in the National League. And then in the middle of March, Blake Snell's still a free agent.
He got right-handed Blake Snell. What does he need to pay left-handed Blake Snell more money for?
So I guess for all the Padres fans that are watching the live stream, what's the difference between Blake Snell and Dylan Cease? Is it comparable?
So from my understanding, for every time I've watched him, Blake Snell throws with his left hand and Dylan Cease exclusively with the right hand. Otherwise, pretty similar. I mean, I think Blake Snell's, his walk rate I mean, at least a little bit, seems to be a bit more like stylistic choice in terms of like being heavy on chase. Where like Dylan will tell you he's trying to throw everything in the zone. This is just the kind of command he has, and there's a lot of movement on the slider. Maybe it's part of commanding it, but he's got these like just such whiff heavy pitches, especially his breaking balls, that his whole idea is just try to get his fastball over at the top of the letters and then throw a bunch of breakers off there and get a lot of swings off of it. It's maybe a little bit more stylistic, but the shape of the production is very similar, but except for that, the stylistic difference of the right hand versus left hand, you're going to notice it right away. I swear.
Yeah, I thank you, James, for that excellent analysis. I mean, from a Padres perspective, though, you already touched on this, James, but even with the 2020 shortened season, it's 4 straight full regular season workloads for Dylan Cease. Just like 97 starts the last 3 seasons, where Blake Snell, he pitched a full season last year, but in 2021, 2022, only 128 innings. So from a Padres perspective, you are getting the right-handed version of Blake Snell, but where Blake Snell will hop on the injured list and maybe miss a few weeks, if not a month, Dylan Cease has proven that he routinely takes the ball every 5th day. So maybe the Padres end up getting 40 more innings of a type of pitcher similar to Blake Snell than if they just had re-signed Blake Snell.
Right. I think it's preferable. I think they're similar enough pitchers, and even before 2020, Dylan threw 124 innings his breakout season in 2018, and he threw 140 innings off that. So he had like this idyllic like build up to his major league load with no real hiccups in terms of health, other than like tweaking hamstrings and getting a comebacker hit off his arm in Cleveland. It's been really kind of it's a little bit younger, it's a little bit cheaper, it's a little bit more stable health wise. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them.
And then Jim, so what do we have for the full trade then? So again, Dylan Cease going to San Diego, reliever Steven Wilson, Drew Thorpe, Samuel Zavala, and then Iriarte, which Cameron Zick, thank you so much, Cameron. Cameron's a Padres fan helping us out here. Big strikeout rates last year, 33%. Yeah, that's what we love. More strikeouts. Which is funny because I know you guys have been writing recently, and you mentioned this on 6 Over the Score on Monday, James, that it seems like the White Sox are moving away from the big strikeout guys, and here they are now acquiring some strikeout guys to give to Brian Bannister to further develop. But is that the extent of the trade, Jim? Those 4 players are be final now for Dylan Cease going to San Diego.
Yeah, it looks like everybody says the names have stopped trickling in. So okay. 5-player deal.
5-player?
Well, including Cease.
Including Cease. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. All right. I asked James this question, Jim. I'll pose this question to you while you were away writing. This starting rotation now, what are we looking at? Because we got questions of like who's going to be the opening day starter. Billy Ice sent us a super chat. Thank you, Billy, for your super chat. Wondering if other teams were offering top 100 prospects. I think that will get leaked out here in a moment. We don't know. James, did you get any names from Texas and who are they offering in their top 100?
Not really. No, I mean, you can kind of make some like one hand. Like I think it would be unlikely to see Texas put. I mean, you kind of saw it play out with this Padres trade. Like these are both contenders. I don't think you're going to see somebody who had the real opportunity to help their 2024 team or even crack their 2024 team's opening a roster being a trade like this. Would be sort of like against the purpose, as much as the White Sox wanted like close proximity guys. But I thought like someone like Wyatt Langford or being in a Cease trade, I don't think that would really serve the purpose for Texas as much. Even if you look at their offense and say like, they can afford it. I think you kind of want to be all in on making your current team as good as possible when you're making a trade like this. So I really didn't see like, something like where the top of the Texas system is beyond like maybe Sebastian Walcott is so geared towards probably helping this year's team. I wonder how much that affected it a little bit because the real big gets of that system probably aren't someone that you're trying to, put in a deal like this.
And then quickly, Jim, before answering that question, Garbage on Twitter, watching live stream. Thank you guys so much for watching the live stream as we approach 8,000 in the live stream right now. Does this trade make a free agent signing more likely? And as James wrote on SoxMachine.com, Michael Lorenzen, is that the only target right now that you're hearing, James, or at least can confirm that the White Sox are interested in?
Yeah, that's the one I've been on, and I think that's the one that probably fits in their price range. I don't think clearing out Cease puts them in line for Snell or anything like that, but Lorenzen would be kind of that tier that you would think that they'd shop in. And, there's probably another drop off to where you're just thinking about NRI guys like Brad Keller after that. So I think that's probably the highest thing you could pin your hopes for. I would think in terms of major league replacements, but we'll see.
So, Jim, to you, what are you thinking about what the possible starting rotation is? Because as I bring up roster resource again, it's got Fedde, it's got Kopech, it's got Soroka, it's got Flexen, and Garrett Crochet, baby, in that starting rotation. I mean, this is a starting rotation with four former first-round picks, Jim.
And 3 Michaels.
It's going to win the AL Central, right?
All Michaels. Trace Garcia's, 3 Michaels. That's what I want. Yeah, I mean, that's, Lorenzen makes sense in terms of like, it's a good opportunity for him, kind of like the Tigers the year before. Here's a place where you can throw all the innings you want. We're not going to criticize you for not striking guys out or like tinkering with whatever you can throw to maximize the amount of outs you can get in a given start. We're all for you. We have Brian Bannister here, and he's somebody who might hold specific appeal as somebody who kind of gets outs however he can get them, and maybe not in the way that's popular in baseball. Like he might look to the White Sox and see a guy like Bannister and say like, yeah, maybe this is the place for me to get traded again to contender in the second half, and maybe I'll throw another no-hitter. One interesting thing, I'm not sure about Zavala, like I might have missed this with you, but did you talk about Samuel Zavala's makeup?
No, I have not.
Well, one thing I was kind of going back and forth between the prospect list, and it's kind of fascinating here, and I don't know which one's true. He's not related
to Sebi. We were getting that question in the comment section. They're not related.
Immediate negative.
Right. Yes. But anyway, conflicting reports here. So in Baseball America, it has a part about like his personality. It says bilingual and a heady player. Zavala has also taken well to coaching and examples of older teammates when it came to finding a routine that allowed him to get his legs under him after a slow start in Lake Elsinore. And then Keith Law says, scouts commented on a lack of focus on defense and even sometimes in the box as well. He still does have the bat speed and makes hard enough contact to expect 20 homer power, but the swing and miss is a real concern, and the on-field makeup is even more so.
Huh.
So, yeah. They have different sources. At least you know it's not the same. They're not getting the word from the same people.
Yes. We got a couple more super chats here. So Stephen Bardo is asking, what's the ETA for these guys? Well, Steven Wilson, according to Roster Resource and Fangraphs, might be the White Sox closer to start the season because who knows? As Jim has been writing on SoxMachine.com, who's in the White Sox bullpen on opening day? Who knows? Whoever is alive. And hopefully Steven Wilson is one of those guys because everyone else that the White Sox have acquired this offseason help out in the bullpen has suffered some type of injury. But I think, so Zavala is 19 years old. He still weighs away maybe a couple years. So 2026, maybe 2027. But Drew Thorpe, Jim, is the one that I'm kind of circling here. If he was so dominant last year in high A and double A, and you're going to be in Birmingham on opening day, and let's say that the White Sox send Thorpe to Birmingham, maybe we see him in September this year. Like, I feel like out of everyone the White Sox have acquired, these 3 prospects, it's definitely Drew Thorpe that we'll see first in Chicago.
Yeah, it seems like he kind of takes the place of Christian Mena in the organization. Like they traded him to get Dominic Fletcher as like I would say Nick Nastrini is the most major league ready, or, in terms of second half of the season when they're, should he show what he needs to show in Charlotte, like he would be the first one called up. But like when Mena was in the organization, he was right behind, or like just logging the innings, not quite figuring out if he had enough fastball or whether he had to tinker his approach. But like you could see, if he gained the 2 ticks he supposedly gained with the Diamondbacks so far, like you could see different pathways for him to get to the majors, maybe as a September call-up. just based on the progress he'd made and how young he was. Thorpe seems to fit in with the same, like, doesn't have a big fastball, kind of succeeds in a way that's not necessarily typical for a double-A righty, but the strikeouts come just the same. He's logging a ton of innings, has shown durability. So, he could be, that's kind of, you're not going to call him a number one or number two, but like middle of the rotation guys get paid too.
And I'll share this. This is video from Baseball America regarding Zavala's swing. He is left-handed, of course. The White Sox are just always looking for left-handed bats, and slow motion here. So nice leg kick, pretty balanced with this particular swing. Again, he had 14 homers last year. He's just 19 years old, and he'll be joining the White Sox system. And I guess Jim will expect him in, if he played high A, or he at least played some high A for San Diego, he'll start the season maybe in Winston-Salem. I guess we'll wait and see to hear from Getz.
Yeah, that's what I want, just because Winston-Salem is playing in Bowling Green in the middle of April. So
selfish
more
reasons.
guys I can see there, the better. Yeah. Daddy needs photos.
Oh, man. Okay. Additional. So Drew, again, thank you so much. Van Schouwen seems like Eric Fetty to start opening day. Logically, that does make sense. Our good friend Beef Loaf, steak bet runs a loud number going up. Of course he prints that up.
Yeah, have you locked that in yet?
No, we didn't.
There had to be contingency, I think.
You know what? Damn it. I made a mistake, because a few months ago, he offered over under season win total for the White Sox, 68.5. And last time I checked the sports book, it was 63.5. Circa is now in Illinois. They dropped it to 62.5 a couple weeks ago. And I haven't seen what the sports books and how they have responded to this trade, but I didn't want to make that type of bet because everybody thinks that I am like the most negative White Sox fan to ever exist. So I didn't really want to go that angle. But James, you didn't directly.
Sounds like Rick Hahn wasn't the only person who missed his contention window, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you, James. Yeah, the runs allowed number is going to go up. It's not going to be 741. I don't even think 760. It probably will be 799.5. But it does bring to question now something that Steve Stone said in the first spring training game is like the White Sox in 2024 are going to win 10 more games than they did in 2023. Now they won't have Dylan Cease to start the season, James. How likely is that angle?
10 more wins than last year?
10 more wins than last year.
I think it's difficult.
Thank you. Okay.
Like
That's big business, James.
Yeah, this is why we brought James on, guys. I know we're getting a little loopy, but if you want this analysis all season long, you go to patreon.com/Sox Machine for full access for this outstanding coverage from James Fegan. It's just $5 a month, but we also have additional tier of support as well. We have $10 a month and $25 a month. $25 a month or $275 yearly, you get to have a monthly Zoom call with James so you can ask him anything on your mind and get this excellent analysis. And we do have some spots available in the Veterans Committee. No, I know we're a little loopy here. We're over 8,000 people in the live stream. Welcome again. I'm Josh Nelson alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan. We are Sox Machine. We cover the Chicago White Sox just in case if there's a lot of people from San Diego join us right now. We did talk about a little bit a while ago. Guys are getting in Dylan Cease. We think he's the right-handed version of Blake Snell, but more dependable. Last 4 seasons able to carry a regular season workload, and he's projected to be 170 to 180 innings. So I think this is a good addition for the Padres. Again, Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, Dylan Cease. Man, if they can stay healthy, and I know Cease will, and they get into rhythm, that's a pretty good front three. And you add in Michael King, and that's a pretty good starting rotation. And there's so many questions right now for the Dodgers with their middle infield that woof. Wolf Larson, thank you so much for your super chat. Cease wouldn't have re-signed or extended. And we talked about this at the beginning of the offseason.
He would not have.
No, he wouldn't have. By signing with Scott Boras, and unless there's like a new chairperson running the White Sox or somebody buys the White Sox from Jerry Reinsdorf and drops a lot of money on the lap of Scott Boras and Dylan Cease. Maybe even still, Cease would probably look elsewhere. Matthew, thank you for the plug for the VC. And Kevin, DraftKings has already responded, Jim. 60.5. They've cut 3 wins off the over under. So the sports books have dropped it to 60.5.
Yeah, it's really hard to project for 100+ losses. Usually, even the over under line. Usually, it's difficult for teams to be that bad. But credit to Chris Getz finishing the job that Rick Hahn started.
So we're approaching the hour mark here, and we'll drop from the live stream because we got a lot more coverage to do. We got to follow up with people. James, have you heard from the White Sox yet? Is there a press conference yet with Chris Getz scheduled?
They haven't confirmed that the trade happened, so no. They usually do that in reverse. I'm hearing more about the process and the return. And I just got a scout responded about Zavala's makeup saying he has a love him or hate him personality, which is perfect because it ties together the two reports.
That doesn't help.
But it's like
a tiebreaker.
It's like a cocky pimp the homer type of dude. So finally, the Tim Anderson replacement is on board. Promises made, promises kept.
So one question I had when it comes to this is better than the leaked Rangers deal. So was that said as was that dropped as Chris Getz lowering the bar to where there's relief when it's just more interesting than buying a pitcher high, buying a pitcher late, and a utility guy?
What's funny with these type of deals is I can text a bunch of scouts and you get a return one, you see the numbers and it's by say Keith Law, it's nobody in the top 5 of the Padres system. And another, you'll be our model loves it, or our model thinks this is a huge win. It just kind of varies based on what you think the ceiling of Iriarte is, or where you think, if you think Zavala is an everyday guy, which I've heard at this point, but from some people, or if it's too far away to project him like that. So I feel there's, the general this feedback I get is that it's good and it's a strong return and it's a big group, but it obviously depends so much on if you like what the projection for a lot of these guys are, because Thorpe is maybe a known commodity a little bit in the sense that it's a command and changeup profile, and the proximity seems to be there, whereas Iriarte and Zavala seem like the big swings where if it hits, it looks awesome, but there's enough risk standpoint where there can be a kind of a wealth of opinion on it.
So we have a couple more weeks left to go in spring training, Jim, and we're going to have our starting pitcher preview podcast coming up here next week. Kind of waiting to see if Dylan Cease was going to actually make the team, and also see who is hurt and actually be available on opening day. James already reported on SoxMachine.com. The White Sox are interested in free agent starting pitcher Michael Lorenzen, who pitched for the Detroit Tigers, the Philadelphia Phillies last year. We know the White Sox could use help with the starting rotation. I asked James this question, but you are away. Would you be against the White Sox on opening day having Nick Nastrini part of the starting rotation to award him, or at least go with the higher up play, ceiling play of a back end rotation starter with the guy they acquired last trade deadline from the Dodgers?
I kind of like the idea in terms of it does inject a little excitement, especially since he's pitching well. It's not a case of just we're desperate for anybody, let's throw him in here. He showed some promise of handling the uppermost levels last year, and Charlotte's always a tricky place to have a successful small sample. And he's having a nice spring, and he's certainly the personality. I think he'll mesh well with White Sox fans. So a lot going for him, but I tend to lean against it just because it does feel like the mess that is the White Sox is extending, kind of seeping into the minor leagues, and you're forcing the timetable up a little faster than I think the White Sox would ideally want. And I think that's really important. I think we saw that with signing Paul DeJong to make sure Colson Montgomery gets all the time he needs in the minors. So they're not desperate for anybody to play shortstop, come May because one guy gets hurt. They have options to cover that position. So he gets all the time he needs to make sure he'll be ready for the level when he's called up. And I think I'd like to see that approach, carried across all positions at all levels. If it's going to be this big of a mess up top, then it's incumbent on Chris Getz to make sure that just the emergency up top doesn't create emergencies below, and then it just cascades of promoting guys who aren't ready, like, kind of Oscar Colas, but on a much wider scale of just having guys who aren't ready, covering a lot more positions because of just a lot more failure going on, a lot more guys who aren't either under contract for the big picture or just are, just have been considered fungible all along.
I'm putting up highlights from YouTube of Drew Thorpe, part of the Yankee system last year, as we get a chance to get some B-roll and watch him in action. That was a pretty gnarly pitch. I mean, this is the big get, right? Now we really focus our attention on what can Drew Thorpe bring to the White Sox pitching rotation and pitching depth. So if Destrini doesn't start the year in Chicago, James, so as far as depth-wise pitching, what do you got? Destrini, Jake Eater, is Kai Busch throwing?
Yeah. They said he's been healthy. They like the fundamental or mechanical changes he's made. He and both Zaleski were pretty optimistic about riding on his back leg and, shortening the arm action like they said the big mission was going into the last offseason. I think you kind of have to see where he's at. Maybe actually have success in Double-A before we start talking about him in terms of usable depth. But, I think it's full speed ahead.
Yeah, just watching the highlights here, Drew Thorpe, really down angle. I mean, the slider down, changeup down in a league that is so about ball and air, which warms my heart, Jim. You know how much I love ball and air type of offense. Watching Drew with these highlights, of course, this is the best of Drew Thorpe. We haven't seen the worst of Drew Thorpe. Nobody puts those highlights up on YouTube. But it would be kind of difficult to get the ball in the air against someone like Drew Thorpe.
Yeah, you hope that you don't have the worst of a guy who's making like $30,000-$40,000 a year. That would seem exceptionally
harsh.
Harsh and just a loss of perspective. So yeah, thankfully we don't have that. But yeah, it's the White Sox have so many projects, so many guys who need to work on deliveries and repeating and just figuring out what they can throw for strikes. And Iriarte is another one that will be on the Brian Bannister, Matt Zaleski to-do list. That I think there probably is a little bit of a reach for certainty, or just somebody who is low maintenance, and that seems to be his calling card. Like everybody seems like there's agreement in terms of like what he does, how well he throws strikes, the order of his pitches. It's just more of a matter of like how well that can do, throwing 92, 94 and relying so much on that changeup against the best of the best. But otherwise, like I think they look at him and see like, okay, there's no, especially since Brian Bannister is now aboard and trying not to tinker or trying to make sure that guys are throwing with their natural arm slots. Like if this is what he carried over from Cal Poly to the Yankee system, then probably he's content to leave well enough alone.
Well, we went past an hour for the live stream. I really appreciate everybody joining us. If you just joined us, wow, we're over 8,600 people. This is our most popular live stream. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, if you just joined us, the breaking news: Dylan Cease has been traded to the San Diego Padres. The White Sox get top 100 prospect pitcher Drew Thorpe. They get a couple other prospects. They also get reliever Steven Wilson to help out in the White Sox bullpen options for opening day. There'll be more coverage on SoxMachine.com, which you can follow us on social media or on all the platforms. We're at Sox Machine. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. Follow James as well at JR Fegan. And again, we'll have more coverage as well on SoxMachine.com. If you just discovered Sox Machine because you're a Padres fan and now you're interested in how these Padres prospects do in the future and want to enjoy what is going to be a fascinating 2024 Chicago White Sox season, no matter what James has to say about what is upcoming and the sports books already being dour, 60.5 wins for the over-under. Anyways, kidding aside, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. And we also do have a podcast, which we take the audio versions of our videos and upload into our podcast channels, which you can subscribe to the Sox Machine podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. This Emergency Sox Machine Live is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for watching.
I'm Mark Chapman. Welcome to the Planet Premier League podcast. Each week, Cesc Fabregas, Nader Manua and myself talk all things Premier League.
As a player, you don't have time to talk. No. You don't have time to make a plan. You just need to deal with wave after wave after wave.
We watched Coach Carter and he said, afterwards, the game's just about doing this for your teammates. And I remember looking around halfway through the film and half the squad was asleep.
Planet Premier League. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.